Once upon a time, in a grand castle surrounded by lush gardens, there lived a beautiful princess who was known far and wide for her beauty and grace. She had golden hair that shimmered like the morning sun and eyes that sparkled with curiosity. She was beloved by all, yet she often found herself longing for adventure beyond the castle walls. The princess loved to wander through the dense forest that bordered the castle grounds. She delighted in the songs of the birds, the rustling of the leaves, and the scent of wildflowers. In this forest, there was an old stone well shaded by towering trees, where she often sat and daydreamed. One of her most cherished possessions was a golden ball, a gift from her father, the king. She would often bring it with her on her walks, tossing it high into the air and catching it with joy. One warm afternoon, as she played near the well, she threw the golden ball up once more, but this time, she missed her catch. She watched in horror as the ball plummeted into the well, disappearing into the dark, murky depths. She gasped, realizing that the well was far too deep for her to retrieve it. Tears welled in her eyes as she dropped to her knees beside the well, sobbing uncontrollably, feeling as though she had lost a dear friend. As she cried, a small green frog emerged from the water and spoke to her. "Why are you so sad, dear princess?" he asked. "Oh, my golden ball has fallen into the well, and I cannot reach it," she replied. The frog looked at her and said, "I can retrieve your ball for you, but what will you give me in return?" The princess, eager to get her toy back, promised him anything he desired: fine clothes, jewels, even a golden crown. But the frog simply shook his head. "I do not want your riches," he said. "Promise me instead that you will let me eat from your plate, drink from your cup, and sleep on your pillow." Thinking the frog's request foolish, the princess hastily agreed, believing he would never leave the well. The moment she made her promise, the frog dove into the water and soon returned with the golden ball. Overjoyed, the princess grabbed it and ran back to the castle, forgetting all about the frog. That evening, as she dined with her father, a strange noise came from the castle doors. Plop, plop, plop. Then a tiny voice called out, "Princess, open the door for me. Have you forgotten your promise?" The princess turned pale and told the king what had happened. He frowned and said, "A promise must be kept. Let the frog in." Reluctantly, the princess opened the door, and the frog hopped inside. He sat beside her at the table, eating from her plate and drinking from her cup. As he tasted the food, his eyes widened with delight. "Oh, what a delicious feast! Never have I eaten such fine food!" he croaked happily. The princess wrinkled her nose but said nothing. She hoped that once the meal was over, the frog would leave. But instead, he looked up at her and said, "It is time for bed now, dear princess. You must take me with you." The princess recoiled in disgust. "No, you have had your meal. Now go back to the well where you belong." But the king sternly reminded her, "You are a princess, and a promise must always be honored." Tears of frustration filled her eyes, but she obeyed. She picked up the slimy frog and carried him to her chambers. When she reached her room, she placed him as far from herself as possible. "Lift me onto your bed," he demanded. She hesitated, but again, her father's words rang in her ears. With great reluctance, she reached out and grabbed the frog between two fingers, her face twisted in discomfort. As she carried him, her grip faltered, and he slipped from her grasp, falling to the floor with a soft thud. For a moment, he lay there, completely still. The princess gasped, her heart pounding in fear. "Oh no, have I killed him?" she whispered. Panicked, she knelt beside him, gently nudging his limp body. "Please, wake up! I didn't mean to," she cried. But the frog remained motionless. Guilt washed over her, and without thinking, she leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to his cold, lifeless skin. In an instant, a golden light filled the room. The frog trembled, then his form began to change. Before the princess's astonished eyes, he stretched, grew, and transformed into a handsome young prince. The princess gasped, stepping back in shock. The prince smiled kindly. "Do not fear, dear princess. I was once a man like any other, but my greed led me astray. I hunted the creatures of the forest without care, taking more than I needed. One day a fairy appeared before me and declared that until I learned kindness and humility, I would live as one of the creatures I had so carelessly harmed." His gaze softened as he looked at the princess. "Your kindness, though reluctant, has broken the spell. You have given me a second chance." The princess, still overwhelmed, slowly smiled. She realized that true kindness came from action, not just words. In time, she and the prince grew fond of each other, and their story became one of love, redemption, and the importance of keeping one's promises. And so, they lived happily ever after, never forgetting the lessons they had learned.